I think he's doing the wrong thing, but he has been desperate to do this. When he got in, he didn't really criticise Kiev for anything apart from his policy on Israel. So we knew he was going to do something. Ed Miliband, now his foreign secretary, wants to do something. But I just think you're stirring up a hornet's nest.
Hello, I'm Hugo Rifkind, and now we're going to be unpacking the politics of the day, from how Andy Burnham will show he's taking a more robust line over Israel than Keir Starmer, to what life would look like under a Zach Polanski government, and the intensely political question of when you have to stop getting your knees out in the office. And joining me is Robert Crampon. You won't be surprised to learn he's been writing about his knees again. You might be surprised to learn he's wearing shorts. Hello, Robert Crampon.
Hi, Hugo. Yeah, I changed my mind about this. I'd said, having written a column saying the shorts were going away, I then saw the forecast and it said, it's going to be a bit muggy and humid, so I put them back on again.
Sounds to me like a pathway to a second column. And we're also joined, of course, by Alice Thomson, who's been writing about altogether more serious matters. Hello, Alice.
Hi, Hugo. I'm glad to see you're still in shorts, Robert.
Thanks, Alice.
Any views on Robert's knees?
Well, I'm missing them, actually.
You must have seen them before. Who hasn't?
Yeah, no, I've seen them quite a lot now.
Look, we will come back to knees later, I promise. Let's start with altogether more serious matters. The story on the front of the Times today: Andy Burnham is ready to announce robust new sanctions on Israeli settlements in the West Bank. He's been warned, though, this could turn into a de facto boycott of the country due to the impossibility of figuring out what Israeli products often come from settlements and which don't. Alice, it's a tricky political balancing act for Burnham. He said that Keir Starmer got it wrong over Israel, which pleases many of his MPs, but he's also at risk of detonating Britain's entire relationship with that country if he gets it wrong, if he goes too far. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's doing the wrong thing, but he has been desperate to do this. When he got in, he didn't really criticise Kiev for anything apart from his policy on Israel. So we knew he was going to do something. Ed Miliband, now his foreign secretary, wants to do something. But I just think you're stirring up a hornet's nest. And at the moment in Britain, the anti-Semitism really was incredibly bad just after Christmas. And it seems to have calmed down a bit. And I think they should try and focus on domestic problems and not foreign issues. And also the boycott may not work. So, I mean, that's the problem, is it's very difficult to have these boycotts. And I think he's saying it to appease his backbenchers. And I'm not sure they're going to be appeased anyway. I think there's still going to be problems when he gets to his party conference. And it just seems as if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And in the end, we should just carry on and try and focus. Well, he should be focusing on the economy.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I mean, Robert, what do you think about this? Because at the same time, I mean, Israel is an ally of Britain. We are supposed to be allied countries. Israeli policy in the West Bank, as relates to settlements, is something that even a great many Zionists regard as pretty abhorrent,
yes,
and something that we wouldn't necessarily stand for from many other countries in the world. Surely, is it not right and proper for the Prime Minister to say so?
I think looking at a map, the latest proposals for settlements. 3,500 homes in this corridor east of Jerusalem puts paid or damages the prospect of a two-state solution, as far off as that may be at the moment. Yeah. So for the British government to say we want to keep the prospect of that solution alive, I think is legitimate. I think beyond that, I think the problem is that a lot of the people proposing it don't really believe in a two-state solution either.
Well, the Israeli government doesn't.
No, the Israeli government believes in a one-state solution.
Yes.
And a lot of the people proposing the sanctions but also believe in a one-state solution.
Just a different state.
Just a different state.
Yes, this is true.
So I don't think that they're kind of honest brokers, really, in this. And I mean, yes, we would be critical of other countries doing similar, but then we don't talk about sanctioning lots of people, lots of countries, because they've got, gangs of Islamists roaming around, say, Nigeria, doing unspeakable things, or in the Sudan, or in the DRC, or whatever. So this has become such a sort of touchstone issue on the left that I'm suspicious. I'm sort of suspicious of any moves to talk about a boycott, because it looks to me like there's lots of people who think we should boycott the whole of Israel, and I don't think we should. And this looks like trying to smuggle that in, really.
Alice, I mean, sort of, Israel will often do this. Israel will point out that any action, any sort of politics, any sanctions against Israel taken out by a Western nation, by someone like Britain, will prompt more anti-Semitism, which is sort of probably true. But it's also, I mean, it's definitely true. And I say that as a British Jew, I can see it's true. But it's quite a useful thing for them to hide behind. And I just think if you take that out of the equation, if you take the fact that it's a Jewish state out of the equation, if you take anti-Semitism out of the equation, this just does seem like foreign policy we ought to have, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you look at Israel, and exactly as Robert said, you look at Israel, but then you look at, say, China, and they've got massive issues too. We haven't mentioned about Tibet. So I think it's really, it's really, really hard. And I think the problem about this is that it does go with anti-Semitism to a certain extent. I mean, it's irritating that Israel uses it on one side, and then, you've got the Green Party that Labour's coming up against the whole time. They're really competing against them. And the Green Party is, on this issue, it is very anti-Israel, and it's that's what they're worrying about. It's all political. It's all about domestic policy.
And 4 million Muslim votes. I mean, the Green Party's just said that a group opposing anti-Semitism can't have a stand at its conference. Now, I mean, I always come back to the big anti-Semitism marches that have taken place since October the 7th. I've been on 2 out of the 3 of them, and I've always said there is nothing stopping Palestine Solidarity or any branch of the Labour Party or any branch of the Green Party or any trade union branch from being on those marches. But they weren't there. They weren't there. Not a single trade union banner, not a single Labour Party banner. Nobody there from you can be massively pro-Palestinian and still be opposed to anti-Semitism, but they weren't there, and so therefore I'm suspicious. And when people say, "Oh, it's not anti-Semitism, it's anti-Zionism," what does that mean in actual practice? That means, you've got 10 million people in Israel, 7 or 8 million of them are Jewish. You don't think they should have a state, right? Where are they going to go? Been there for generations. That sounds to me pretty close to anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's obviously not the kind of policy the government is proposing. They're simply talking about sanctions on produce from illegal settlements. I guess that the greater problem is that it just simply might not work because the economy of the settlements is so intertwined with the economy of the rest of Israel. So Labour Friends of Israel has said a boycott of trade with settlements is practically impossible and will become a de facto boycott of all of Israel.
Well, I agree with that.
Which would be deeply damaging to the UK national interest. Yeah. Let's move on. Look, we've heard this morning that the regulator Ofgem will raise the energy price cap to 4%. It's the highest level for 3 years. Factors including the rise in the wholesale gas price and volatile global markets as a result of the conflict in the Middle East have been blamed. The Tories have said the government needs to climb down from its green ideology. Here is the Energy Secretary, Miatta Van Buller, speaking to Times Radio.
The issue that we have, and if you look at the cost of energy on businesses, it is more in this country, and that is because we are uniquely exposed to the gas and global markets. So other countries, for example, in France, they have, nuclear that they rely on, and that helps drive down their energy bills. And this is why we were really clear when we came into government. We've got to reduce that exposure because that's the thing that is pushing up prices. And the more renewables we can get into the system, the more that pushes down the cost of energy.
Alice, so look, I'm a supporter of green energy, and I'm a sort of believer in the long-term economic plan that boundless and limitless green energy means that we'll make ultimately for cheaper energy for everybody in Britain. But the logic of that is somewhat inhibited, I find, when I try and make this argument. By the way, it so plainly isn't happening. It's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and Miatta Van Buller, what she's right about is that France has nuclear, and that's what I will come back to, is that we just need to improve our nuclear programme because in a way, that is one of the most green energies that we can have. But at the same time, it's not going to be as expensive as trying to have wind and solar across the country, which is less predictable. So, I mean, that's what I would do if I was now Labour. I would be pushing nuclear very hard.
But that'll take. I mean, I don't want to sound like Nick Clegg of 20 years ago, but that will take a long time. That's not something we can do in the next sort of months and years, is it, Alice?
No, but then the net zero, and that's the problem, is that if we are too wedded to that, it is going to be difficult in the next 10 years. And so that we've got to have some short-term measures before we get to the longer-term ones.
Robert?
Well, it just needs to be, it needs to be a smoother, longer transition, doesn't it? I think in trying to do it by 2050, that sounds like a long way away, but it isn't particularly. And, with having quite stringent carbon levies and with a real overzealous emphasis on renewables, it's meaning that the bills are too high, and we're going to lose out in other respects. If the costs of using energy here are kind of 4 times greater than they are in the States, you can forget about say big AI.
Data centers.
And so on. So. Yeah, I think they need to just row back a little bit from the zealousness of it, and I think most people, like you, I would be obviously in favour of this in the long run, but it needs to be a longer run than what's envisaged at the moment.
I mean, Alice, we spoke to Tom Whipple about this on the show this morning, and he made the point, which is often made, that it's, of course, renewables aren't expensive, but the energy from them becomes expensive because it is matched to the gas price, because you need to have a certain amount of gas in order to generate electricity when renewables aren't working, and the price of everything else for various technical reasons, which I must admit, although I've talked about a lot, I never quite understand.
No, I'm still struggling with that.
The price of all energy has to map onto the gas price. Surely that's the bit that you'd hope we could just fix.
Yeah, well, you and I think we can, but that's because we don't really understand it, do we? Otherwise, they would have done it. I mean, that's the problem. It is so unbelievably complicated, which is why we can't rely on it, and why, we all still have these sort of incredibly basic stories about don't turn your kettle on when there's a football match, because it's going to harm the solar. So, that is the problem. On the other hand, I do think we're getting somewhere, and I think we do beat ourselves up about this a lot in Britain. And if you look across Europe, they've all got issues, but ours is more expensive. But we've now balanced. I think I feel that we've done pretty well on the net zero. I think we could rein back now because we've done a lot.
We need to be careful.
No, Hugo, because last time you said, last week even, you were worried because you thought we've nearly there. Don't pull out now, is your view.
Yeah, very much so.
We just need to be careful in terms of our own energy security and in terms of driving away things from businesses because our costs are too high.
Yeah.
Which has its own very negative impact.
Yeah, but
we don't want everyone can have clean and possibly cheap fuel, but they've also got to have a job.
I'm yet to hear anyone reasonably suggest how, in the short term, we can bring these costs down without giving up on an awful lot of the good work that it seems to me that we've done over the last couple of decades. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. Look, stick with us. We're going to be talking about why trees are better than air conditioning, and we're also going to be talking about the Green Party generally, and about Dolly Parton, and about Robert's knees. Which bit are you looking forward to the most? I know what I'd say. Hugo Rifkind here, currently unpacking the politics of the day with Robert Crampon and Alice Thomson. We've just been discussing net zero. Let's park that for a little bit, but only a tiny bit, because Alice, you've got an idea about how we could all keep cool in rising temperatures without spending lots and far too much money, and indeed lots of energy as well on aircon, and that is planting more trees. And you use the example of Medellin in Colombia. Tell us about it.
Well, Medellin used to be, about a decade ago when I went, when it was just first opened up after the drugs trade sort of left, because it was the big drugs cartel centre. And they, when they left, it was a kind of concrete jungle, and it did have a few trees. It was, it's got quite a temperate temperature, so people like living there. But it was too hot all year round, and they were thinking about putting in aircon. And in the end, the mayor said he wanted to start planting trees, and they planted 250,000 in the first year, and they just kept planting for a decade. And they've actually managed to lower the temperature of the city by 2 degrees. And it just looks extraordinary now. I mean, it's like being in a kind of cool jungle, and they don't bother having air conditioning, and they have plants all the way up, all the walls. They have them on the flyovers. They have them, every street. They have 30 corridors, which are all tree lined, and everyone sits outside. They do their gyms outside. Schools quite often outside, and they've just totally transformed the whole city, which is what I was saying. We could do that in London, where it's far less hot than it is in Medellin, or in any city really in Britain.
Don't we already have quite a lot of trees in London? It's quite a green city, isn't it?
Some of it. Hampstead's incredibly green. That's the most green area, I think, in England now. But that's actually a lot of the streets aren't, and actually there are fewer the trees we have now than we had a decade ago. Or keep trying to plant more and more trees, but we don't look after them, and that's another part of the problem, that you have to actually water them, you have to tend to them, and we can't expect the councils to do that. We should be helping do that too, otherwise it's impossible.
Robert, would you like to make the case against trees?
No, I wouldn't. I'm very pro tree. I've got a London plane tree in front of my house, which has been a real lifesaver this summer, because that's sort of southwest, and so for most of the day, the house will be considerably hotter if it weren't for that tree. So I'm entirely in favour of it. It's one of those things where what works for the individual, it doesn't work for the society. I mean, individual benefit would be, let's get an aircon unit, and if everyone does that, it's a bad idea. So yeah, I think London's quite green, but I think I read somewhere that England or as a whole is only about 15% wooded compared to Europe, which is sort of more like 25-30%.
Right. Sure, it's definitely worth doing. Yeah. I mean, I would say, well, complication there though. What with the hot summer we just had, I know subsidence is sort of becoming a real problem across British cities, not just in London.
It is, and
cities built on clay. And I wonder how many a year from now, how many of London, for example, how many of London's suburban trees will have lost because of subsidence?
I think Alice made a very good point in her column about how we need to start thinking about non-native trees. It's a sort of article of faith with rewilding and green issues generally that it should all be about native species. But that's going to change because our native species are not adapted to this kind of weather. Yeah. So, and I mean, she tell you the examples herself. She was talking about Mexican oaks and so on, and how we need to get away from the idea that importing non-native species is a bad idea because we're going to need things that are more drought resistant.
All that being said, don't put a giant American redwood in your front garden. You will regret it remarkably quickly. Still on green matters, let's talk about the Green Party, because faced with the rising popularity of Andy Burnham, Zach Balansky has been facing pressure from Green activists and various senior grassroots figures to take more radical left-wing stances, which might be hard to imagine given where he is already, but there you go. Robert, you've been writing about what the country might look like if Zach Balansky did indeed manage to become Prime Minister, was leading the country from number 10. Turns out you're not wholly enamoured with the idea.
No, I don't. When you look at some of the green policies, they're quite difficult to discern sometimes because they've got this very decentralised structure. So you have to go through sort of local manifestos. And their manifesto from 2024, pre-Zelensky, is very different from what it might look like now. But looking at some of their local manifestos, particularly on the issue of crime, it's absolutely extraordinary. I mean, they talk about moving away from a punitive-based system of justice for littering and fly tipping, things that you would think Greens would be extremely non-lenient about. They say, well, let's move away from a punitive system. There was a story in the papers yesterday or the day before that they kind of sort of want to move away from a prison-based justice system, and you think this is crazy. I mean, we can't kind of allow that to happen. That's anyway,
nonsense. It's nonsense as well. I mean, but Alice,
and also they talk about zero growth or negative growth. So I think they need to, given that they did so well in the local elections, they need to be kind of exposed as to what they actually think. And now they're talking about moving even further to the left. I mean, I don't regard it as left really. I regard it as just insane.
Alice, Robert's piece was very funny, but the striking thing about it was that it wasn't making any of it up. It was all green policies. And people, when you speak to green voters and green supporters, they get quite shirty when you kind of sort of say, well, look, this is what the policies mean. This is what you want, because they sort of seem to be supporting like a vibe, the bits they like, but not the bits they don't like, and so on. I mean, nobody really wants to have this conversation.
Well, that's because most of them are either Gen Z or Gen A. I mean, the fact is that if you get 16 to 18-year-olds voting, they are going to be more likely to vote Green. And the Greens know that, and Zach Balansky knows that. So this is all kind of aimed at the young. And actually, the Greens never used to be that. They used to be much more sort of sandal-wearing, older, particularly women, who cared about their compost, and they kind of cared about their, bees and the countryside. And that just doesn't happen anymore. They're not interested in that. I mean, like just going back to trees, that nearly 50% of people actually could concrete over their front gardens. That would be quite a good issue for the Greens, is to say, actually we need more greenery, we need more trees, but they're not doing any of that. It's all about either Israel or about negative growth or, issues that they think the young will like, or like not looking up the young. I mean, it's like, it's all pandering to them. And when you're all 16, that sounds quite a good idea, doesn't it?
I mean, so far, the sort of sensible Greens, the former leader of the Brighton MP, whose name escapes me now, Caroline Lucas, and the previous joint leaders, the MP up in Herefordshire and the one in Bristol, who were sensible and who were basically ousted by Polanski. We haven't heard very much from them. I can't believe that they think this stuff is. Well, I know for a fact that they can't believe this stuff is sensible.
There was a fascinating interview last week with a woman called Liz Spencer, who is Liz Spencer, who's the mother of Hannah Spencer, who's the newly elected Green MP, who's basically an old school Green from back when it was called the Ecology Party, who was complaining about the influx of new people into the party, who are of course the people who support her daughter.
Correct. And Polanski was elected with something like 83% of the vote, and a lot of those were new members. I mean, he obviously ran a pretty good operation.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you're looking for, he's an impressive figure. Look, let's move on. Let's cross the political spectrum. Reform UK's Treasury spokesperson Robert Jenrick has been holding a press conference detailing the party's plans on business regulation, including scrapping GDPR. Listen to this.
There are other countries around the world that have done this. Look at New Zealand. They have created a system which is sufficiently light touch that it does not place all these burdens upon small businesses. You don't have to be constantly clicking accept or reject every time you go onto a website and they ask you about the cookies.
It's very odd, this, Alice. It's like Reform deciding, I think maybe rightly, that people are going to vote for using the internet not being just such a terrible hassle.
I think they will do that, but I think it's an odd thing for Reform to be talking about now. And I'm not quite sure why Jenrick has chosen this subject, apart from the fact that they probably feel that they're not getting enough votes elsewhere, and it's quite a good rallying call. I can't see why anyone would be particularly against it.
But I mean, isn't it, Alice? Isn't it a sort of? It's an EU thing, isn't it? Isn't it to sort of disambiguate British law from EU law? You paint the EU as the sort of the home of like annoying regulation that everybody hates, and this is one of the few places you can still have that battle.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there are quite a lot of areas with the EU they want to have a battle. But what it is it's such a niche area. It's bizarre they're doing it. And I think, it goes back to there's issues that, that we do sort of rally on. Like, I think the main one is that, young not having access to the internet. And that's much better when it is EU-wide and British. But, I can't understand quite where he's coming from on this one. I think it's really odd to have picked it up. I think it's odd that, I can see why he likes New Zealand for other reasons, but it's an odd battle to be having.
Robert, is it enough to make you vote Reform to not have to worry about what cookies are anymore?
No, but it's sort of worrying me because I kind of agree with it as a policy, and it's probably aimed at people, men my age and older, who think, this is all a big terrible fuss.
I can make the counter case, which is like GDPR doesn't exist to make it a bit of a hassle that you've got to click stuff on websites. It exists to protect your data, so that people don't use it in evil ways and try and sell you stuff that you don't want. And,
yes, well, I certainly don't want that to happen, but I don't. I get fed up clicking on cookies and you accept or reject, and so he's probably thinking that this will rally guys like me, but it wouldn't be enough to make me vote for them.
You're sleepwalking into digital totalitarianism, Robert. Let's talk about Dolly Parton. Tributes are being paid to her, the country music legend who passed away at the age of 80. She seems to be a sort of completely non-polarising figure in popular culture. I interviewed her in 2009. I've been talking about that a bit on the programme. She was absolutely lovely, but also very fascinating, very clever, and just really just on top of what she was doing, understood her own brand. Alice, was she an inspiration for you?
Yeah, she was, but also there were loads of stuff I didn't know, which I always like once you read the obit later. And even Times obit is just filled with bits. Like, I didn't know Dolly the sheep was called after her. Just hadn't realised that when we cloned the first sheep, we called it after her. And the fact that she had 12, there were 12 siblings. I knew her father couldn't read or write, and I do think that's one of the extraordinary things. Is her absolute obsession was trying to get children to read and giving children out books and encouraging literacy. And in many ways, she was astonishing like that. She had 100 million albums, but she used that money. And in the music industry, that's quite rare to be quite so sane and savvy with your money.
Yeah, well, she was very separate from the kind of sort of the mainstream American sort of popular culture, partly because she came out of country, so she was based in Nashville rather than LA. But she just didn't really entangle with all the usual record labels in quite the same way. She kept an awful lot of autonomy. Robert, you've interviewed an awful lot of massive names,
but not Dolly, sadly.
How often are they nice? I don't just mean nice to you, and how often do you come away thinking, wow, what a nice person?
Actively, probably 10% of the time. I just interviewed Richard Osman, the writer, and thought he was tremendously. I think probably more as I get older, I get more tolerant.
Yeah.
and then probably 10% who you think are actively pretty awful, and a bit like, I suppose, a massive humanity, really, and 80% are somewhere in between. I think my point about Dolly, she was a tremendous person, and she's sort of. She was middle America, and we're used in this country to sort of slightly looking down on that and being slightly fearful of it because of guns and religion and Trump and so on. But she was everything that we would want to like about middle America, whilst keeping and she kept true to it.
So when I went to Nashville, and I mentioned this before, so I went to her compound in Nashville, which was as you'd imagine, a sort of a compound in Nashville, but it had a recording studio, it had a performing space, it had some accommodation, it had a church for her and her workers to use, because of course they all go to church several times a week, but also all of her staff. Pretty much everyone who worked there was a kind of sort of really strapping kind of 30-year-old American man in a lumberjack shirt who had a flatbed truck, who were just really. You just got the sort of really sort of solid, good Christian boys who absolutely loved Dolly Parton. Yeah. And there's just no... And I bet they were into their guns as well as their country music, but there's no reflection of them that we see in this country. No. Who that kind of person is. And
she kept out... I don't know whether she did her endorsements for presidents. I don't think she did. I mean, that would have been... Bruce Springsteen would have taken that role 20 years ago, but then given part of the polarisation of the states with him being gone very democratic and having this sort of ongoing spat with Trump. But Dolly, you sort of thought she was probably on the liberal side of things, but I don't think she ever she cannily stayed out of that. The other point I'd make about it is that she was a tremendous woman, but she was also a really good musician and songwriter. She wrote some superb songs and a kind of sort of almost kind of journalistic songs. I mean, 9 to 5, which is a sort of kind of dancey, frothy number, is actually, it's a kind of feminist anthem as well, and it's a good piece of reportage from 1980. It encapsulates an era very, very well. She was a great thing. I mean, I read her biography, and it's a sad day. But then 80, good age.
She was an incredible musician. When I met her, she told me that she played guitar every day, and I looked at her fingernails, which were about as long as my fingers, and I was like, you can't possibly play guitar every day. And she said, no, I do. The secret is an open G tuning and bar chords, which guitarists like that will get.
And look at the status of the people who came out straight away. I mean, McCartney, Elton John, Taylor Swift, Beyonce. They were right there. People who know about this stuff. They knew how good she was.
She's also Miley Cyrus's godmother. Yeah, worth knowing. Look, while this has all been going on in the world, Robert, you've also been following the developments of Erling Haaland's haircut. Tell us about it.
Erling Haaland, famous for Norwegian and Manchester City striker, famous for his long blonde Viking hair, has had it all cut off for the beginning of the new season. I was sort of slightly celebrating the return of the soap opera that is the Premiership. For those, even for people, the football is the sort of least of it for me. It's a national soap opera with characters coming and going and subplots and so forth. And Erling Haaland's hair is one of them. And I think it'd be quite influential. Sunday was the day that Liverpool played Newcastle and remembered Kevin Keegan, their joint idol. And if anybody knows anything about Kevin Keegan, they know about the perm. So footballers' hair is significant.
It goes a long way, yeah.
It goes a long way. And I think Haaland's hair could be quite influential. And he posted a load of pictures of it, and one of them was really, the sort of embarrassing picture that not many of us would have the courage to publish of his hair pre-cut, all in kind of little bunches, ready, and sort of combed, And I thought, good for you. He's not a guy who's worried about, having to project this conventional masculinity all the time. And he had a great World Cup. He was very self-deprecating and funny, and I just thought really warming to him.
He's a funny-looking fella. Alice, what do you prefer, the long or the short Erling Haaland?
Yeah, well, I think he's like David Beckham when he was young. I mean, it's great. He's he knows his masculinity. He loves messing around. He has those huge handbags. There's nothing not to like about him. He was the best bit in a way about the World Cup, because you just thought Norway behaved amazingly. They didn't win, but everyone loved them. He's just incredibly kind of upbeat, good news, and can play football. So it's extraordinary, really. He's the sort of perfect role model. On Roberts, I thought the mullet was one of the worst cuts ever. So I'm quite glad it's gone. But also, I don't think anyone was growing their hair long. I've got teen boys, and they were definitely not growing their hair long. But they all have that incredibly short buzz cut. and most of them, and they do bleach it. So in fact, I think he's going the other way. I think he's just joining them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, teenage boys' hair has been quite long for a few years. It's about time it got short again.
Yeah, I mean, it was. And people they are influential. I mean, when Gazza had his peroxide crop for Euro '96, and he's got that amazing goal against Scotland, that was quite a big deal and quite influential. I remember, and I think
certainly as a balding middle-aged man, I'm very much in favour of hair getting short again. Yeah. Hair getting long was becoming a problem.
I think you've got lovely hair, Hugo.
It works better at the back than the front, I think, these days, unfortunately. Let's talk about your knees. It's about time.
We did this last week.
We didn't talk about your knees. We talked about your chest.
Okay. Well, having said that, I was going to keep going back to long trousers. I think that was premature.
You wrote a column saying you're going to miss wearing shorts, but time's up.
Yeah, because I thought it was getting cooler.
Yeah. And
as in the temperature was getting cooler, and turns out it's not. Well, I mean, it's not heat wave, but it's muggy, which is the worst. Which is actually even worse than heat. Humidity. Hate it. So yeah, shorts are back.
Alice, male office clothing, to what extent should it intersect, as it so often does with Robert Crampon, with the stuff you'd wear to the gym?
No, Robert's are quite baggy shorts. It's okay. I mean, if it was really tight lycra, I think we'd all complain. But I think that the idea that, that we had a great summer. I think we've been moaning about the summer because it's been too hot and too, and it's all awful. But part of it was really good fun. I mean, there was sort of an element of it that we all really enjoyed, that, that you could wear whatever you want, and you weren't constantly taking a raincoat. And, in some ways, I'm going to miss all that. Actually, I did put on a suit for the first time a couple of days ago, and it does feel weird again.
Yeah, I mean, the heat does make the country feel like a different place, doesn't it?
Yeah. I forgot, because it hadn't rained for so long, I forgot our roof was leaking, and then when it rained the other day, I thought, oh yeah, I've got to put some buckets out. Because it hadn't been 2 months or something, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It changes everything, really, that kind of... This will change everything. It'll change where we go on holiday, and eventually, I suppose, it will change our sort of national personality, if you like.
When you were a younger man, a young reporter at the Times, would you have worn shorts into the office back then?
I did briefly, because I cycled to work, so I sometimes had not only shorts but cycling shorts.
Were there not comments from some of the old men?
Yeah, there was a little bit. I mean, it's always been. Yeah, I mean, if you were thinking you're going to meet the public, and I suppose I was more likely to do that in those days, then you dressed accordingly. But yeah, it's always been reasonably relaxed here.
Yeah.
Don't you find?
I guess I can remember going back. It's not even that long ago. This is the early 2000s. Merely wearing a pink shirt, and one of the older reporters saying to me, "Didn't know you were that way inclined."
Oh, really?
I was like, it's just a pink shirt.
Yeah. I mean, but as you know, it's all changed. Those guys have gone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
they were.
And things are a bit more liberal now. But I think.
Yeah, they're not that much. I think if you go into conference and meetings with us, I think a lot of them, particularly say leader conference, most people are wearing a shirt and a suit, and they take the jacket off, but only once the edit has. It's still quite formal in some ways. But
well, I go into leader.
We all wore mini skirts, which I kind of think was weird back then. Literally that it was just much shorter than anyone would do now, and that was the opposite, really. The kind of the early 90s, you could do that, but you also wore incredibly high heels, and no one wears heels anymore. So.
No. Yeah,
it's a lot for women, I think.
Yeah, the dress code for women would have changed much more radically.
Well, it's changed radically, but I guess, I mean, so, like, Alice, I don't say this as any slur on Robert, who, of course, looks fantastic in his gym kit every single day, but not many women would come into the office dressed like that, would they?
No, occasionally you have it, but I mean, I think most women... Yeah, we still don't wear jeans. You don't wear jumpers that much. I mean, you could wear white jeans. It's weird how... No one really has any rules, but you sort of look around. And I definitely with Gen Z, you say to them, just go into the office the first day quite smart and look around what everyone's doing, and then just copy them, because in the end, it is a sort of tribe, isn't it? You're meant to be wearing what everyone else is wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. So basically, Robert, just to sum up here, then, you thought it was time. You thought shorts were over, but now they're not over. You're gonna have to write another column when they are over.
Yeah, and I also I just thought dress for comfort, Hugo. I mean, I'm 62 years old. I've been here 35 years. What? I mean, realistically, what are they going to do to me?
They're going to say, "Could you go home and put some trousers on? You're in editorial conference, Robert Crampon." Yeah,
well, I did. But I think I did last. No, actually, I did wear shorts. I go into leaders twice a week, and I think I've worn shorts in there. But I make sure to get in early so the editor can't see my legs.
And then
I
first in, last to leave.
And I shuffle out, hiding behind Danny Finkelstein.
He must have noticed.
Yeah, I think he probably has.
Yeah, well, maybe
I've got special dispensation.
Maybe I've said this before, but I feel like I'm going to have to completely change my work wardrobe now. Now Andy Burnham dresses like me. I think it's very unfair of him.
Yeah, I saw him getting off the train in Kyiv, and I thought, even though we know it, that there he is in his black t-shirt, and you think, oh,
and
wow.
You thought what's Hugo Rifkind doing in Kyiv?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
It's becoming a problem. Sorry, Alice.
No, I mean, I thought actually Kemi Badenoch was quite interesting when she went to see, in Italy to see Maloney. Maloney wore a very smart navy suit and white shirt, and Kemi was in a sort of, light white summer dress, no shoulders. And I thought that was quite, the fact that the Italians are still far smarter than we are.
Yeah,
it's gone into kind of anything goes mode.
That hasn't changed.
I thought Kemi Badenoch she looked like she was on holiday and she was going to pop off to a museum next. Yeah, she just popped in to see the Italian Prime Minister.
But her husband was in a suit, wasn't he? That was the weird thing that he'd dressed up.
Yeah, no, it's true. Look, that's us out of time. Thanks very much indeed, both of you, for being with us. As always, that is Robert Crampon in his shorts and Alice Thomson as well. Thank you both. Great to speak to both of you. This is Hugo Rifkind here on Times Radio.